In the dim glow of a small-town funeral home in rural Tennessee, a loyal golden retriever named Max stood motionless beside his owner's casket, barking relentlessly through the night, a haunting, desperate sound that chilled everyone in the room. No one could understand why this dog, who had never barked without reason in his 12 years, refused to stop, refused to leave the side of the man everyone believed was gone forever. What happened next would shake an entire community to its core and prove that sometimes love reaches beyond the grave in ways no one could ever imagine. Hey, if you're already feeling those chills running down your spine, do me a favor real quick. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because stories like this one don't come around often, and you don't want to miss what I'm about to tell you. The year was 2019, and the man in the coffin was Thomas Harlan, a 68-year-old widower known to everyone in Willow Creek as simply Mr. Tom. He had been a mechanic his whole life, the kind of man who could fix anything with his hands and a little patience, the kind who never turned away a neighbor in need. His wife, Clara, had passed from cancer 8 long years earlier, and since then it had just been him and Max, that big-hearted golden retriever he'd rescued from the shelter the very week Clara died. Folks said Max saved Tom as much as Tom saved Max. They were inseparable. You'd see them every morning walking the same route down County Road 17, Tom with his old John Deere cap and Max trotting happily beside him, tail wagging like the world was nothing but sunshine. But on the morning of October 14th, everything changed. Tom's neighbor, Mrs. Evelyn Carter, noticed his truck hadn't moved from the driveway in 2 days. She knocked, no answer, called his phone, straight to voicemail. Finally, she peered through the kitchen window and saw him slumped over the table, a cup of coffee gone cold beside him. By the time the paramedics arrived, they pronounced him dead on the scene, massive heart attack, instant and painless, they said. Just like that, Mr. Tom was gone. The funeral was set for 3 days later. The whole town showed up, packing the little white chapel until there was standing room only. People brought casseroles and pies to the house afterward, told stories about how Tom had fixed their tractors for free when money was tight, how he'd sat with old Mr. Jenkins every night in the hospital until he passed. And through it all, there was Max. The family had tried to leave him at home, but he howled so pitifully they finally brought him to the funeral home. From the moment he saw the casket, he planted himself right in front of it and started barking. Not aggressive, not scared, just urgent, insistent, like he was trying to tell the world something no one else could hear. The funeral director, a kind but practical man named Roger, tried everything. He offered Max treats, water, even a blanket in the corner. Nothing worked. The dog would not move. He wouldn't eat. He barely drank. He just kept barking, deep, mournful, then sharp and frantic. Over and over, hour after hour, visitors started whispering. Some laughed nervously and said dogs grieve in strange ways. Others crossed themselves and muttered about signs from above. Tom's only daughter, Sarah, who had flown in from Chicago with her husband and 2 little boys, was beside herself. She knelt down, wrapped her arms around Max's neck, and sobbed, "He's gone, buddy. Daddy's gone." But Max just looked at her with those big brown eyes, whined once and turned back to the casket, barking again like his heart was breaking in half. Night fell. Most of the town had gone home. Only Sarah, her husband Mark, and a couple of close family friends remained for the private viewing before the burial the next morning. The funeral home lights were dimmed low, just a soft glow over the casket. That's when things got strange, really strange. Max's barking changed. It wasn't random anymore. It had a rhythm, almost like he was responding to something. Bark, pause, bark, bark, longer pause, bark, over and over the same pattern. Sarah recorded it on her phone because it felt intentional, like a code. Mark, who had always been the skeptic in the family, rolled his eyes at first, but even he couldn't deny it after a while. "It's almost like Morse code or something," he muttered. Sarah laughed through her tears, said that was ridiculous. But then Max did something that made everyone's blood run cold. He stopped barking, walked right up to the casket, placed both front paws on the edge, and stared straight down at Tom's face. Then he let out the most heartbreaking howl anyone had ever heard, long and low and full of pain, before collapsing onto the floor, panting heavily. That's when Roger, the funeral director, walked in to check on them. He took one look at Max, one look at the family gathered around, and something shifted in his expression. He'd been doing this job for 30 years. He'd seen grieving pets before, but never anything like this. "Y'all," he said quietly, "I don't usually say things like this, but that dog ain't acting right. He ain't grieving. He's trying to wake him up." Sarah stared at him. "What are you saying?" Roger hesitated. Then he said the words no one expected. "I think we need to call the coroner. Right now. Something ain't adding up." You see, there was something the family didn't know yet. Something that had been buried under paperwork and assumption. When the paramedics arrived at Tom's house that morning, they had followed protocol. No pulse, no breathing, lividity setting in, rigor mortis beginning. They called it. But the coroner, he never actually examined the body in person. It was a small county. Budget cuts. They relied on the paramedics' report. The body was transferred straight to the funeral home for embalming. Standard procedure, no autopsy required for an elderly man with no signs of foul play. But now, with Max refusing to give up, doubt crept in like fog over the hills. Sarah made the call herself, hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. The county coroner, Dr. Elena Ramirez, was not happy about being woken up at 11:47 p.m., but when Sarah explained about the dog, something in her voice must have convinced her. She arrived 40 minutes later with her assistant, still in scrubs from an earlier shift. She started with the basics: stethoscope, pulse check, pupil response. Nothing. Then she checked for rigor mortis. It was incomplete. Strange for someone pronounced dead over 72 hours ago. She checked lividity. It hadn't fully fixed. She shone a light in Tom's eyes again. And that's when she saw it, the tiniest flicker, not imagination, not hope, a real, measurable response. "Get me an ambulance," she barked at her assistant. Now, what happened next felt like a scene straight out of a movie. The funeral home doors burst open. EMTs rushed in with equipment. They hooked Tom up to monitors, and there it was, faint, barely there, but undeniable. A heartbeat, 28 beats per minute, coma so deep it mimicked death. A rare condition called Lazarus syndrome mixed with severe hypothermia from the cool October night, and a medication interaction no one knew about because Tom never liked bothering doctors. His body had shut down to protect itself. He wasn't dead. He had been buried alive in a coma while everyone, including trained professionals, thought he was gone. They worked on him right there on the funeral home floor. Defibrillator paddles, epinephrine, warming blankets, and through it all, Max never left his side. He lay with his head on Tom's leg, whining softly, tail thumping weakly against the carpet. At 1:23 a.m., Thomas Harlan opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was Max's face inches from his own, those big brown eyes shining with tears. The first thing he did was lift a trembling hand and rest it on Max's head. "Hey, buddy," he whispered, voice raw and faint. I heard you calling me." The room erupted in sobs. Sarah collapsed beside her father, clutching his hand like she was 10 years old again. Dr. Ramirez stood back, wiping her eyes, muttering, "I've never. In 20 years, Roger, the funeral director, just shook his head over and over, saying that dog saved his life." Tom spent 6 weeks in the hospital recovering. Doctors called it a miracle. The news spread like wildfire. Local papers, then national. "Dog refuses to let owner die." The headlines screamed. "Golden Retriever barks man back to life." People came from all over to meet Max, to bring him steaks and toys and belly rubs. He became a legend, but to Tom, he was just Max, his best friend, the one who never gave up. When Tom finally came home that Christmas Eve, the whole town lined the streets. They hung a banner across Main Street that read, "Welcome home, Mr. Tom, thanks, Max." There wasn't a dry eye in Willow Creek. Tom stepped out of the car with a cane, thinner, weaker, but alive, and right beside him, trotting proudly with a big red bow around his neck, was Max, the dog who refused to let death win. Years later, when people asked Tom what it was like, being that close to the edge, he always said the same thing. It was dark, quiet. But then I heard him. My boy was barking. Not loud at first, just steady. Like a lighthouse in a storm, he wouldn't stop. He kept calling me home. I followed that sound all the way back. Max lived to be 15. When his time finally came, peacefully in his sleep beside Tom's chair, Tom buried him in the backyard under the big oak tree with a stone that reads, "Max Harlan, the dog who brought his human back from the dead. Best friend forever." And if you ever drive through Willow Creek, Tennessee, folks will still tell you the story. They'll point to the little white funeral home and say, "That's where it happened. That's where a dog's love proved stronger than death itself." So tell me, friend, from which part of the country are you watching this video right now? Drop it in the comments below, whether it's California, Texas, New York, or right here in Tennessee. I read every single one, and I can't wait to see where this story has reached tonight.